Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Payne Fund, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, everyone, and this is the official start of our program today. Good afternoon, welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Bob Littman, the City Club's Board of Directors President, and it's a pleasure to welcome Mayor Nan Whaley with us today. She's here as part of our ongoing effort to put you in conversation with the people shaping the future of our state and the people who hope to lead it, specifically the candidates for governor of the state of Ohio. 2018, Ohioans will head to the poll to cast votes in races in all 16 congressional seats, 1 Senate seat, and offices of governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, and auditor. Together, these roles comprise a large portion of Ohio state and federal representation. This summer, Republican Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor announced her candidacy for governor office at a City Club forum. And at previous forums, we heard from Secretary of State John Husted and Attorney General Mike DeWine, who have both since announced their candidacies, along with Ohio Senator Joe Schiavone, who joined us as the first officially announced gubernatorial candidate. Joining us today is Nan Whaley. Originally from Indiana, Ms. Whaley moved to Ohio to attend the University of Dayton, earning a chemistry degree in 1998. She became active in local politics, creating the University of Dayton College Dems chapter and then becoming the executive director of the Montgomery County Democratic Party in 1997. From 2001 to 2005, she was an aide with the Montgomery County's auditor's office. In 2005, Ms. Whaley became the youngest woman elected to the Dayton City Commission. She served 2 terms before becoming Dayton's second female mayor in 2013. She was reelected earlier this year in an unopposed election and announced her gubernatorial bid on May 8th. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please welcome gubernatorial candidate Nan Whaley.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Bob, for that introduction. It's a real honor for me to have the opportunity to address the Cleveland City Club. This is an experience I would certainly include on my bucket list, so thank you so much for allowing me this time to share my thoughts with you today. I'm Nan Whaley, and it's been my pleasure to be here in this great city of Cleveland. For the last 4 years, I've had the honor to serve as mayor of another great Ohio city, Dayton, home of the UD Flyers and the birthplace of aviation. When I was first elected to mayor in 2013, I took a trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of Ohio's congressional delegation. I was sitting in Senator Sherrod Brown's office when I noticed a magazine with Vice President Biden's picture on the cover. I opened it up, and the article inside had a list of some of the memorable lines the Vice President has said over the course of his career. Now, Joe Biden is well known for some of his colorful quotes, and I will always remember the very first one listed in that article. He said, "I never had an interest in being a mayor because that's a real job. You have to produce. That's why I was able to be a senator for 36 years. Now, I hope Senator Brown didn't mind, but I took the magazine, and to this day I have the quote hanging on the door in my office at City Hall. Now, Vice President Biden was right. When you serve as mayor, you don't have the luxury of being able to look away or ignore the people you serve. As mayor of Dayton, I've had to deliver results every single day. Now, one thing I want you to know about me is that you may not always agree with me, but you will always know where I stand. A true leader takes a stand. A true leader has to lead with her values and not be afraid of bold new ideas and change. That's the only way I've been able to accomplish anything as a progressive mayor in the reddest part of this state. Before I go any further, let me introduce my parents, Joe and Nan Whaley. I'm so pleased that they came up to Cleveland to join me here today. When I was a little girl, one of my first memories is watching the Reagan-Carter debate with my parents. And I remember my mom saying, "This is bad. This is so bad." When I asked her what was so bad, she said to me, "Ronald Reagan is going to be elected president, and this is bad." I know you all don't remember this, and it was. It was bad for our family. Not long after the election, my dad, who worked for General Motors and was a member of the UAW, was laid off. If you ask him, he remembers this date to this day, August 21st, 1981. One night at dinner, I remember my mom asking, "Do you know why there's no meat on this table?" "Well, you can thank Ronald Reagan for that." She said, "Ronald Reagan took the meat off this table." Now, I was a child, and I didn't really notice that there was no meat on the table. But from then on, when anything bad happened, we blamed Ronald Reagan. My dad used to call Ronald Reagan the Grinch who stole Christmas. If we weren't able to go on a family vacation, it was Ronald Reagan's fault. When I couldn't get a new outfit, it was because of Ronald Reagan. If it was raining outside and I couldn't go outside and play, I was sure that Ronald Reagan had caused that rain. Now, all joking aside, my parents taught me that elections have consequences, that bad policies affect good people. Luckily, my dad had the support of a strong labor union. He eventually returned to his job, and yes, meat did return to our table. But I have never forgotten that lesson. I've had the opportunity to travel across our state to work on issues that affect us all. I was a founding member of the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, representing Ohio's 30 largest cities. I'm so excited Mary Stevens, who's part of that, is with us today. And I have worked with those mayors on a number of common issues and concern. In 2011, I was the chief of staff on the No on Senate Bill 5 campaign, where I was proud to work to keep collective bargaining rights right here in Ohio. Through these experiences, I've seen the diversity of this state. But despite our differences, we all have common hopes and dreams. We all want to live in a state where we can provide for our families. We all want to live in a state where everyone has a chance to succeed. We all want to live in a state where opportunity truly is available to everyone. We also have common doubts and fears. Many of our neighbors and friends are frustrated and angry. They feel forgotten, invisible, and ignored. And really, who can blame them? They've been misled and deceived for years. Governor Kasich, however, has described the state's economy in recent years as the Ohio miracle. Well, the Ohio miracle has trailed the nation on jobs for 60 straight months. Last year was the worst year for jobs in Ohio since 2009. Think about it. 2009 was the height of the Great Recession. The Ohio miracle has Ohioans consistently trailing the nation in earnings. The people of Ohio are working more and more and getting paid less and less. Just one example. While in Lake County this past summer, I met a lady named Nancy. Nancy has been working for one of the public schools in Lake County for 16 years. Just this year, she finally started earning more than $30,000. That's not nearly enough for her to take care of her family, so she told me she had to take on a second job as a cashier at a local grocery store. The Ohio miracle hasn't made its way to Nancy's wallet. The Ohio miracle has slashed your community's budget in order to create tax loopholes for the wealthy and special interests. So your local community has had to raise your property taxes to make ends meet. The Ohio miracle is in fact nothing more than the Ohio mirage. The State House crowd wants you to see job numbers that aren't there. They want you to see tax cuts that aren't real. They want you to see more money in your pocket that doesn't exist. Lawmakers in Columbus have balanced their budgets on the backs of working people. They have balanced their budgets on the backs of schools, and they have balanced their budgets on the backs of our cities and towns. When it comes to vital public services, cities and towns are where the rubber meets the road. But this State House crowd doesn't even seem to know where the road is. The mayor of Lorain recently testified at a legislative hearing in Columbus that police cars in his city are breaking down on the way to emergencies. There aren't enough resources to provide the basic services we need and expect. I was in Monroe County, down in the southeastern part of the state, and the county recorder told me they can't even find people willing to run for office anymore. In Monroe County, there were 22 open seats on the ballot this past week, that no one filed to fill. Why? Can it be that no one can bear the responsibility of letting down their neighbors and family because our communities lack the resources to deliver vital services? My city has had to deal with cuts in state support and dwindling resources as well. It has forced me to make some difficult and sometimes painful decisions in order to balance a nearly $500 million budget and still meet the needs of our residents. But despite the lack of a real partner in Columbus, something our cities and towns desperately need, we have had some great successes in Dayton. We've been able to cut our unemployment in half by creating jobs and spurring more than $1 billion in investment in our city. Reports indicate that job growth in the Dayton region is at its highest level in 18 years. 43 new businesses opened just in downtown Dayton last year, bringing activity and new jobs to our urban center. More than $250 million has been invested in some major capital projects in my city, including construction of a new patient tower at Dayton Children's Hospital and a new 6-story office building for another one of our largest employers. The downtown housing market is hot, maybe the hottest it's ever been, with a total occupancy of 97%. We've made investing in Dayton's economic success our highest priority. So we've invested in our companies, in our infrastructure, and in our amenities. But investing in our city's success also means we're investing in our greatest resource, our people, our workforce. We were the first in the state to provide paid parental leave for our city workers, providing support to families and helping to keep women in the workforce. And beginning this year, we were able to offer every family in our city who has a 4-year-old the opportunity to send their child to a quality, affordable preschool. I will have more to say about that later. It's because I've worked with every neighborhood and community in Dayton, and only because I've worked with every community, that we've been able to move our city forward and accomplish so much. I'm going to take that same approach as governor. We need a governor who will focus on every corner of Ohio. We need a governor who will be ready to partner and work with every segment of the state, from small towns and big cities, from farms and factories, from Lake Erie all the way to the Ohio River. Yes, we have been deceived and misled, but as bad as the deceit has been in Columbus, it doesn't compare to the lies that we have been told by the big pharmaceutical companies. The big drug companies, distributors, and doctors came into our towns and cities and told us opioids weren't addictive. But now the opioid epidemic is tearing our communities, our families, our economy, and our state apart. Ohio leads the nation in accidental overdose deaths. On average, 11 Ohioans are lost every day to the opioid epidemic. Of the top 10 cities in America, marred by this deadly crisis, 3 are in Ohio, and one of those cities is Dayton. That's why Dayton was one of the first cities to declare a state of emergency in response to this epidemic back in 2014. In 2015, Narcan was administered 19,000 times in this state. In 2017, Narcan was administered 12,000 times just in the city of Dayton. The numbers are staggering. The headlines are gut-wrenching. but it really hits home when it gets personal. For me, it got personal in 2008 when I learned that a young man whose family lived 2 streets away from my family's home when I was growing up, whom I used to babysit when he was 5 and I was 13, died from an overdose at the age of 23. It got personal again when I got a phone call a few months ago telling me a family friend who I've known for more than 20 years had OD'd twice in 1 week. This is a young man with a good paying job, a young man who had served our nation in the armed forces and now had a family of his own. It took 4 doses of Narcan to revive him. Too many fathers and mothers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters are getting calls like this. This is not a plague brought upon our society, but by unknown forces from afar. We know who is to blame, we know who is responsible, and we know who needs to be held accountable. This past June, Dayton was the first city in Ohio and 4th in the nation to file suit against the drug companies, manufacturers, distributors, and doctors responsible for this crisis. And cities and counties across our state and nation have followed our lead and brought suits of their own. Cities like Parma, Toledo, Lorain, Cincinnati, even Reno, Nevada, and counties like Columbiana, Licking, and even Cuyahoga are also working to hold the big drug companies accountable. We know more will be joining us soon. Our communities are taking action because the state and federal government have shown no leadership on this issue. At the end of October, officials in Butler County, down in southwest Ohio, announced that they are considering a property tax levy to fund a plan to pay for recovery housing and more treatment beds. The director of their Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board said they have exhausted all options for funding, and he doesn't expect much help from Washington or Columbus. The State House crowd thinks that if they close their eyes and click their heels, this heroin epidemic will go away. Folks, this isn't the land of Oz. We cannot expect this crisis to magically disappear. Our state needs to do more to treat this epidemic like the emergency that it is. Columbus needs to do more work with and coordinate the joint effort of local officials who are on the front lines of this fight. The Ohio Mayor's Alliance recently wrote to Governor Kasich detailing how the state can do a better job to address the opioid crisis. The Alliance offered a number of recommendations that included calling on the state to activate the State Emergency Operations Center. Activating this center is a critical step the state has taken in the past when there's a natural disaster or public health emergency. The center was activated in response to the swine flu outbreak in 2009, which took the lives of 52 Ohioans. The heroin epidemic is an emergency, and this center could improve communication between officials in our local communities and allow for better sharing of critical data. Additionally, I have proposed an aggressive policy initiative that will allow the state of Ohio to take the lead in cleaning up the opioid epidemic. Some 631 million doses of opioids were distributed in Ohio last year. I am proposing a nickel per dose surcharge to be paid by the drug manufacturers to provide critical funds to begin repairing the devastation they've created. The surcharge will create a sustainable revenue source of more than $35.1 million every single year. And with those dollars, we'll be able to return resources to our communities that they so desperately need to fight this epidemic. We will be able to provide additional funding for police and fire services to support those who are on the front lines of this crisis. We will be able to double state resources for substance abuse stabilization centers and treatment facilities. And we will double state resources for mental health crisis centers and Ohio psychiatric hospitals. There is no question the opioid epidemic is a public health emergency with tragic consequences for so many Ohioans. It is also an economic crisis that threatens to wipe out a generation of workers. A new study by researchers at Ohio State University has determined that the opioid epidemic is having a $6.6 to $8.8 billion annual financial toll on our state, from the cost of medical treatment expenses related to law enforcement, and loss of productivity of our workforce. It is a drag on Ohio's economy that totals almost the same amount the state spends each year on K-12 education. It equates to roughly $18 to $24 million every single day. The people of Ohio should not have to spend their hard-earned tax dollars to clean up a mess created by the drug companies. Those responsible for creating this crisis, those responsible for eroding the foundation of our state, must be held accountable. This is about justice for our communities and our taxpayers. It's about justice for the families who have lost loved ones, justice for the employers who can't find workers, and this is about justice for the people and the families who are struggling with addiction in our communities and our streets right now. Before I close, I want to go back and say more about Dayton's Universal Pre-K initiative and the critical role education plays in our desire to move our state forward. Earlier I said a true leader cannot be afraid of new ideas and change. If we want to change the direction of our state, education is the key. Nelson Mandela said it best: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. When I was first sworn in as mayor, I challenged the people of Dayton to become a city of learners, a city that invests in the education of its children, a city where all its children are given a chance to succeed and are prepared to face the challenges of tomorrow. Nothing truly great and lasting can be accomplished for our children, our future leaders, and our future workforce aren't getting the education they need and deserve. Over the past 3 years, we have developed a number of initiatives to address various areas needed to improve our schools. The work that has been done and the progress that has been made are impressive, but from the very beginning, there was one concern that stood out. It was clear to all of us involved with the City of Learners initiative that the path to success for our children begins long before they start kindergarten. So last year, I and the other members of the Dayton City Commission put forth a bold plan to fund universal pre-K for every Dayton 4-year-old. And with the strong support across the community, with the endorsement of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce and other local business leaders, and with the backing of organized labor, faith-based leaders, community activists, educators, and parents, this plan was approved by the people of Dayton. Starting this school year, almost 1,100 Dayton 4-year-olds are attending quality preschools at nearly 60 sites. This is a great accomplishment and an important first step, but there is so much more to be done. Arne Duncan, former Secretary of Education in the Obama administration, once said, "In today's knowledge economy today's knowledge is based on the global economy. Jobs will go more and more to the best educated workforce." We are going through what is often a brutal economic transformation, and the rules for a lot of people have changed. To get a secure, well-paying job matters less on who you know, what you can lift, or how many shifts you're willing to work. What counts now is what you know and how willing you are to keep learning new skills. In today's economy, an increasing number of jobs require some post-high school education. We are told by the year 2025, or maybe even before, 2 out of every 3 jobs will require a college degree or some type of certificate. Yet Ohio's workforce is falling behind and falling short of that benchmark. In fact, some Ohio school districts report higher graduation rates, but fewer students enrolling in college. Cost is often cited as a major reason for those deciding not to seek post-high school education. So today, I am excited to announce that as governor, I will institute a statewide plan to provide access to universal free community college for every Ohioan. Every Ohioan who works hard should have the opportunity to make a living for themselves and for their families. But for too many hardworking Ohioans, those opportunities are just out of reach. Free community college will allow every Ohioan to take advantage of lifelong learning and training opportunities. And it will provide our workforce a greater chance to develop the skills needed to compete in the new global economy. Other states, most notably Tennessee, have had great success in creating similar educational programs, and other states are considering such programs. Tennessee has seen enrollment for first-time freshmen at community colleges increase by 30%. With the help of the Dayton Foundation, a pilot program is helping students in Dayton enroll at Sinclair Community College. Similar programs are in the trial stages at Clark State Community College in Springfield, Lorain Community College, and Eastern Gateway Community College in Steubenville. All of Ohio's 23 community colleges play a key role in educating and training our workforce, and they enjoy widespread support. Here this week, voters overwhelmingly approved a $227 million bond issue to improve and expand facilities at Cuyahoga Community College. And in Montgomery County, 74% voted in favor of a $28 million renewal levy for Sinclair Community College. As governor, I will act boldly to give our workforce greater access to these institutions. A post-secondary credential is the new benchmark for a family-sustaining career. This is about giving every hardworking Ohioan an opportunity to succeed, and to succeed without having to leave Ohio. Universal Free Community College will provide that opportunity. If there's one message I'd like to leave you with, it's this: false claims and more broken promises will not move this state forward. If we want to turn this state around, we need a governor who's ready to act boldly, a governor who gets it and knows how to get things done, a governor who isn't afraid to face Ohio's challenges head on. So, if you believe in the dignity of work, then why can't we create good jobs with wages you can raise a family on? If you believe in the power of education, then why can't we make high-quality preschool a reality for every child? Why can't we make universal access to free community college a reality for every hardworking Ohioan? And if you believe that heroin truly is a cancer, eating away at Ohio from within, then why shouldn't the big drug companies who made this mess pay to clean it up? I'm Nan Whaley, and if you believe that Ohio's best days can be ahead of us, then I ask you to join me on this campaign for governor. Thank you.
Today, we are enjoying a forum in our Ohio 2018 Meet the Candidates series, a conversation with Nan Whaley, Mayor of Dayton and Democratic candidate for Governor of Ohio. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everybody, City Club members, guests, students, and those of you who are joining via our webcast or Facebook Live. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and our staff will try to work it into the program. And holding the microphone today is Content Coordinator Bliss Davis in the back. May we have our first question, please?
I forgot. Thank you. Hi. A governor can do a plan, a strategy, hire good staff, but you only get budget authority from legislature. And currently the legislature is a little character building for democratic philosophies. How do you plan on getting them on board so you have the money to spend to take Ohio in the right direction?
Cheryl, I loved how you described it as character building. Yeah, so I think there are opportunities. Just in the last budget, for example, we saw that Senator Seitz and Senator Lehner called for the end of the loophole that is basically free for folks in small businesses getting $250,000. They pay no taxes. And so when you see someone as conservative as Seitz, who, truly I barely agree with anything on, seeing that opportunity, I think we'll find ways to be able to move forward in places that make sense. But look, I think, we need to talk as a party, and the next governor, when we win, I think is really key to make sure that we're talking about economic issues, and they need to be talking about that. Because instead, what they've done in that state legislature is talk about issues that don't really affect Ohioans. And I think the governor can lead the agenda to make sure we're talking about issues that are really affecting Ohioans every day.
Please talk about Dayton as being an immigrant-friendly community.
Sure. Well, I'm very proud. Dayton is an open and inclusive community no matter what. We say that every day, no matter who you believe, what you love, who you love, or where you come from. You're welcome in Dayton. And Dayton was the first city to declare itself an immigrant-friendly community in 2010. We think diversity and inclusivity is the key to growth. Just last month, we were certified by Welcoming America as the first certified welcoming city in the country. We believe that this is important just for not only morally right, but it also shows that progressive issues can lead to economic prosperity, and that's what we're showing in Dayton through all of these issues, whether it be immigrant-friendly, paid parental leave, high-quality preschool. We want to show that these progressive ideas can lead to growth in people's well-being in their pocketbook, and that is bearing out, and immigrant-friendly is one of them. Thanks, Michael.
I applaud what you've done for pre-K education.
Thank you.
And I'm excited about your proposal for post-secondary. My question is on a totally different subject. What is your position on gun control?
Yeah, I'm a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns in every town, and have been on the record as a mayor and continue to be for common sense gun legislation. And again, we certainly haven't seen that in this state legislature, where they're pretzeling themselves to do anything that gun makers want. I think that is not a way forward. I think it needs to have a national response, frankly. We have seen some movement in Congress that is surprising. I didn't think that they would actually move, because they never have before. And I think the policy change needs to come there. But certainly, the way that the state legislature has gone the opposite direction on this issue is a big challenge for Ohio as well.
Thank you, Mayor Whaley. We appreciate you coming up. How high of a priority is or are public transportation and bicycle infrastructure for Ohio?
Yes, so in Dayton, I could talk the whole hour about Dayton, so I tried to really pinch it in. But in Dayton, we're very proud to have a Link bike share. I think even before the city of Cleveland did a bike share program, and we've seen really terrific response from it. Look, I think the state I think it's 47th in the country on transit. So if you just think about that for a moment, for 47th, that means like a state like Wyoming or North Dakota or South Dakota or Utah. I mean, places that are very sparse are actually beating Ohio on public transit dollars, which makes no sense considering that we are a state of cities. So, and also we have a pretty significant issue in this state about folks aging in place, which is great. We want them to age in place. But getting people as they get older, we don't necessarily want them to drive, so we have to invest in transit. This governor and the state legislature have just been kicking the can down the road on all infrastructure issues, and transit is probably the brightest example. And I think, too, we need to be more thoughtful about how we do transit across the state. Right now, it's really locally driven, and so things stop at like a county line and aren't in the regional economic development sense. And if the state took a lead on transit in partnership with local communities, we could see transit systems that would connect cities like Cleveland and Akron, like Cincinnati and Dayton, to really make our economy more robust. It's a key part for economic development and very, very important if we're really going to move the state forward. Bicycle infrastructure is really about the last mile and making sure it's connected to the transit system. That's something we've done in Dayton. One thing you might not know about Dayton, Dayton has the largest number of paved trails in the country, 400 miles. I encourage you to come down and visit. It's flat, so even if you're not really good at bicycling, you don't have many hills down there. But we really try to invest in connecting that infrastructure and making sure that it's connected to the transit system. More could be done. This is an issue where the state could really lead in partnership with local communities to leverage transit in a more regional way.
Hello.
Hi.
At the federal level, the U.S. administration has pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord, or it will be doing that, as it was announced. They've stopped the implementation of the Clean Power Plan. This has made state action vital to addressing climate change. At our state legislature, we do have renewable energy standards, the energy efficiency standards, but there's been a big push to stop those, roll them back. So I guess as governor, what's your position on energy and climate policy, and how would you continue to move that forward?
So I think the work that the Nature Conservancy has done, I think is very thoughtful on this effort. What I really think is wrong-headed on the energy policy in Ohio is how it's been anti-jobs, right? We're losing job opportunities by not investing in this, particularly around renewables, and then also just the change in the set-aside for wind turbines, right? Make them impossible to put in Ohio today. So that needs to change. And again, it's a state house run amok. You know, one guy doesn't like it, nobody wants to fight it, and so the next thing we know, we don't have any of these jobs and opportunities for jobs in our state, while Indiana and Pennsylvania are gaining those. And so I think really that is a key part, not only for us to do the right thing, but then also show how it can create jobs in our state, I think is really important. And I think that is the message that we need to really push across the state. You know, there's lots of folks that want to have, for example, wind turbines, but there's just no way to be able to have them in our communities now because of the set-aside rules. That's an easy thing to do if, and polling shows that most Ohioans want that to happen, but we need to have a voice in Columbus that isn't monochrome of everyone just saying the same thing and no one really paying attention. And I think those are the examples where if you have a governor, you can really invest and make a difference and then ask why they're against this, which they don't really have a good reason.
I want to echo my thanks about your remarks on pre-K and secondary education. That's terrific. Address my remarks to elementary.
Yeah.
3 times the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled our public school funding formula unconstitutional. What are your thoughts to address that?
It is unconstitutional. The state legislature, again, continues to kick the can down the road. Look, what we're seeing across the state, not only with K-12 now, but even cities, is communities that can raise property taxes and those that can't do without. And so we're seeing the inequity probably even more so than the DeRolf decision in '94, you know, more extreme. So again, if the state would lead and be more thoughtful in being a partner with local communities and local schools and change funding formulas around that and change their whole mindset is really what's needed. And I think that's really what drove me into this race. As a mayor, I know what opportunities the state is missing by not really partnering with local communities. And we have so much opportunity that is just like getting thrown out the door because they don't want to have that partnership. It's like they'll tell you from on a high and you have to figure it out on the ground. And you have local elected officials just working their tails off, doing great things, but we're missing opportunities to really leverage that. And that's really why I'm in this race.
Hey, Nan. Thanks for coming up to Cleveland and spending so much time letting us get to know you up here. My question is a political question. Sorry, Dan, to make it political. Yeah. So the election result on Tuesday was, for a Democrat like me, exceeded expectations. Yes, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a while. What lessons, if any, do you take from that election, and how can it propel you going into next year?
Yeah, so I was too relieved about having 1 year down on the Trump administration, 3 to go. I think that the takeaways for us is, number one, people are motivated by what's going on in the White House, and we're seeing that at the ballot box, and they are coming and voting, which is good. Secondly, the diversity of the candidates was enormous. The number of women running for office and being elected is impressive in these communities and in these states. We saw Warren County. I'm in Montgomery County. Warren County is the county south. I think their Democratic Party last November in 2016 had a box of manure dropped in front of its Democratic headquarters. It made national news. So not a friendly place for any kind of progressives. They elected 5 Democrats in the county of Warren County Tuesday. First time they've ever had any Democrat in Warren County be elected. So this is a big change, I think, that we're seeing in the beginning of a swale. and I think, it's in response for a bunch of, not a lot of folks paying great attention and thinking it didn't matter last November, seeing that it does, seeing that elections have consequences, and getting really engaged. So, I think that's good for our state. Our state, for the past 24 of 28 years, has had Republican rule. I think that people are hungry for something different, and so I think it's a great opportunity in 2018 for the progressive movement.
I was wondering what your feelings are about natural gas drilling and pipelines.
Yeah, so I as a mayor, I'm a big fan of local control. And so one of the issues right now in the State House is they've taken the abilities right for cities and communities to vote, that they don't want that in their community. And I think that's, again, a big issue. If a community does not want that, they should be able to vote and have home rule rights like Ohio used to have, to be able to stop that. I think that's very, very important. I think, too, there's a lot of discussion about having drilling on public sites. I'm not in favor of that. I think that, our sites, and we have some of the most beautiful, diverse sites across the state, and having them be drilled for economic gain is not, I don't think, the way forward for the state of Ohio. And we'll continue to develop our energy policy in the coming months, but those two pieces are key core beliefs for me in the energy discussion. You've got to be on your toes here. All right.
I was wondering how you are going to fund a free community college.
How I was going to fund it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, so the cost is it's the last dollar in program, and right now Ohioans are leaving around $90 million on the table by not even filling out their FAFSA forms. And so we would, and Tennessee, for example, has seen an enormous increase in just the FAFSA completion. Have you guys done your FAFSAs yet? Okay, good. So the FAFSA completion is key, and that helps us be able to pull down federal dollars. The cost is really about $50 to $60 million when we model it off of the Tennessee plan. That would allow, we could do that through a bond, which would allow it to be sustaining. And in the state budget, $50 to $60 million to invest in the future of our workforce to make sure that you all stay in Ohio is a drop in the bucket for other things they're spending on. So it would be a pretty low-cost way for us to have access for community college, both for folks like you and then older, hardworking Ohioans that want to be retrained and take a new direction.
I was wondering, or I laud your vision and agree with it and would love to see it come true.
Great, so you're voting for me in the primary, right? Right.
What I would like to know is, how do you actually go about changing entrenched mindsets and interests?
Yeah, so look, I'm known as one of the more progressive mayors in the state of Ohio, so, right, from my colleagues. And I am surrounded in Dayton and Montgomery County by probably the most conservative state house members, arguably in the state. There's one other state rep that's a Democrat, and that's it. Jim Jordan's district, nearly as close to mine, as well as Boehner's old district. Okay, surrounds. Don't guess. So I am used to very conservative folks. And we find ways to partner to move forward for the good of our community. While I don't agree on a lot of things they do, some of them do want to move Dayton forward. And so we can find ways to do that. I think pre-K is a great example. There was great work done before I became mayor by the community in a collective impact model like many of you have here in Cleveland to really drive the need for us to have opportunities for our workforce. This is about a workforce play. And the chamber, who is one of the most conservative chambers in the state, supported an earnings tax to provide universal pre-K. And so the work of, look, this is really important for the future of our community, and you have to support it because you're saying this is what's really important. So I think you can find places like that. Now, I'm not Pollyannish and think that I'm going to be elected governor as a Democrat and that the state legislature will be so excited that I'm there. They're just going to line my door to come see me. I know that. But I do think that you can find places where you can work and really lean on their belief that Ohio's got to get faster and better. And I think regardless of party, people know that if we don't change the way we're doing business when it comes to workforce issues, when it comes to talent, when it comes to making sure that Ohioans stay in Ohio, like, we're not going to make it. And so I think that's something that we can work on regardless of party. Secondly, I think that, with having at least a Democrat and not just all Republican down there, I think there's an opportunity for us to have the discourse of ideas. There is no discourse of ideas right now at the State House. It is, we're going to tell you what, we're going to shove it down your throat, and that's what it's going to be. And there's no discussion on whether that's the right way to go. So just the need to have discourse of two different ideas in the State House, I think will open this wide open, and that's a great opportunity for our state. And I think my ideas are better, and I think they'll win. So I think that that's really, really important, and not to be afraid of that. And as mayor, that's something that you learn how to do very fast. You have to stand by the convictions of your beliefs and govern through them.
We have a question from Twitter. What's your stance on the Down syndrome abortion ban bill, and how will you protect privacy of doctor-patient decision-making?
So I don't know much detail on the Down syndrome abortion ban bill. I'll have to tell you that. But look, I am a key believer that, and fundamental belief for me is a woman's right to choose, and that these decisions are between her and her doctor, and not between her and her doctor and her government. I've said before that the governor can actually do a lot on issues for reproductive freedom. To start with, you could just actually have a doctor be the head of the Department of Health. I think that would be a great first start in this effort. And the work that the Department of Health has done to really curb women's access to health care has been something that's not been covered very much in this state. And so as governor, there are so many executive orders that you can really do to make sure that there's access to reproductive freedom in this state, that you don't even need the state legislature. And I'm really excited to be elected to be able to do that all in day one.
Yeah. I have a question. At the beginning of the presentation, you talked about the lack of jobs in Ohio. Then you went on to talk about the jobs in Dayton. Mm-hmm. And then I hear about all these programs. I have 3 college graduates that all live out of state because they couldn't find jobs here. It seems to me the way to get jobs is lower taxes, and that sounds like a Republican idea. But how did you do it in Dayton? Is it tax incentives? I mean, what led you to get all the jobs in Dayton that you're talking about?
Well, I think the key part in Dayton, too, is in the height of the Great Recession, we lost 68,000 jobs in our region. About 18% of the workforce was contracted. It was probably the toughest recession that the state saw was actually in Dayton. So the recovery's been strong and brisk, particularly with partnerships from existing companies. And that's what we find. 80% of new jobs actually come from existing companies and opportunities to invest there. And so we've worked hand in glove on those efforts. I'd also like to say, though, I don't think the state has done a really terrific job in partnering with local communities about the opportunities they see for entrepreneurship and no business. And this is particularly in smaller communities. They really don't know who the Jobs Ohio rep even is. There's no discussion about opportunities to really invest in small business, which is really the place we see lots of opportunity for job growth. Not the big companies. We know this. I mean, every study shows this. And so we have to get back to what I call, not even back to, we have to start doing this economic gardening, where you're really listening to the community. And every community in the state's different. What is the environment in Cleveland for job opportunities? There's a lot of spinoffs, I'm sure, from the clinic and other places. It's not going to work in Dayton. We don't have a research hospital. And so you really have to engage with that local community to see the opportunities to leverage. And a little goes a long way with the state, and the state could do a lot in these smaller communities to really leverage some job growth that would keep Ohioans here. And I think you see it. Here you are in Cleveland. You know the story. Your family's left. Imagine if you're in Steubenville or Lancaster or Massillon. It's 100 times tougher to keep young talent. And if we don't do that work on economic gardening to really start partnering to make sure that we have good job growth, I think that we're going to be in bigger trouble. We're missing a lot of opportunities there. As a mayor, I really get that. I understand that that's the work that needs to be done and the state's not paying enough attention to that. I have a belief that the reason why they did that is it's not very sexy. You don't run for national office by saying, look at the 5 jobs I created in Marietta, but you do get to run for a national office with really big wins. And so what's been lost in that conversation is the opportunity to really do some good homegrown work that could make a great difference. I believe young people want to live in big cities, and I think they want to live in small towns. I think they want to live where they have opportunities, but also where their family is. We see a lot of people come back because it's very difficult to raise kids without grandparents, right? And so I think that there's great opportunities there if we rolled up our sleeves, got to work, and really, I think having a vision of, as a mayor, getting that is, I think, really key in the governor's office too. Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, Mayor, first of all, thank you so much for joining us at the City Club. It's a privilege to have you speak here. I want to ask you about race in America today. The City of Cleveland, as you know, is under a consent decree to essentially repair relations between police and the communities they serve. And the Department of Justice put the consent decree together because they found systemic bias inside and structural problems inside of the police department. We're in a time where white supremacy, unabashed white supremacy, seems to be on the rise, or at least implicitly endorsed by certain forces in our nation today, and we're in a city in which poverty is really strikingly along racial lines. So what's the governor's role in addressing these issues and ensuring an equitable future for our state?
So, very hard question, definitely an hour's worth of work there. Let me say, every city and every mayor across the country that has a diverse population, which Dayton does, has many conversations about what we can do. And I also want to point out there are no best practices for community policing. We're constantly learning from each other, and each community is so different that there are things that might work great in one city that don't necessarily work. So again, having that flexibility in community is really, really important. We've had great success in Dayton with community police councils. We started this work actually really early in 2010. A lot of the discussion started in Ferguson time, but we've been doing that work before. We had issues that really sparked us to say, oh, what we see and what the community see is very different, and that's a relationship issue. I tell both the police officers and the community that, the police-community relationships is like a marriage. It's not something that you say, oh, I got that figured out, so I don't need to work on it today. It's something you work on as a relationship every single day, and that work is never, ever done. And so once you get in that mindset, you're able to really work. But we need to allow communities to have that and have the support from the state to do that. Again, what the state has done by cutting resources to local communities makes that even more difficult to do. As I mentioned, we have stories on top of stories that we can't even get police cars to some neighborhoods. And so, the real work that needs to be done and building those relationships of time is at a premium because of the cuts in resources that local communities have seen. So that is an easy one that the governor can certainly help right away. But further, I think the issue of criminal justice, and you'll hear more about this on our campaign. We have an effort that's coming about it. But the criminalization of poverty, the issue of real needed, thoughtful criminal justice reform is something that is long overdue in this state. And that's another place I think you can find some Republicans in the state legislature that are interested. I might question their interests on why they're interested, but they are. Usually theirs is around an issue of cost. I think ours is more of an issue of justice. And I think there's great opportunities there to really dig into how we can make this a more equitable situation. And, really just not keep on getting people further and further behind because they're in touch with the criminal justice system. It's not working. It's also exasperating local judges and local jails and local communities, and they cannot afford it. And so I think that you'll hear a lot more about this than just a couple-minute answer from us in the next few months. But it's something we're really passionate about, something that we see every day in our cities. And again, this inequity that keeps on getting stretched between our local communities because the state provides no leadership is a really big issue. Uh-oh.
welcome to Cleveland, and thank you so much for coming to the City
Thanks,
Club. We
Bud.
really appreciate it. Your message, your personality, everything is so compelling, and yet Democrats are so hungry to win that as we look at a competitive primary here and lots of Democrats running against each other, I like competitive primaries because it spreads a message far and wide, particularly when media seem to be very uninterested in covering campaigns. But could you please tell us in practical terms, for Democrats who are looking to see how do we find a candidate that can win the primary and win the general election against all that dark money, all those dark forces? What are the ingredients? Tell us about fundraising. Tell us about the practical aspects of how you get elected governor of Ohio and turn this around.
Look, I think that the key issue here is that Democrats can keep on doing the same thing they've been doing for decades and continue to lose. Like, you know, we have a lot of names that have been out there for decades, they're great people, but they don't win. Or we could try a bold new way. And someone that's from local government, someone that's been a mayor, that's been on the ground, knows how to get stuff done, that is fresh, is, I think, the way forward for our party. I wouldn't be in this race if I didn't think I was the best general election candidate for our party. I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in June, and Frank Lutz, I don't really care for him, came to speak to us, and he was talking about polling. And he said to the mayors, he said, well, as mayors, you can do whatever you want. The word Congress has a 15% approval rating. The word governor has a 48% approval rating. The word mayor has a 72% approval rating. You're the last place anybody trusts in government these days. Because when you're a mayor, you cannot look away. You've got to get it done. And if the Democratic Party doesn't realize that they need to have a new direction with a new idea, we're not going to make it. And so that's really the reason why I decided to get in the race. I think it's going to be incredibly hard. The state is getting less and less diverse, which makes it difficult for Democrats. I recognize that. If we do not have a message that really speaks to folks very directly, we're not going to win. And again, someone that's been on the ground, that knows those stories, understands them, feels them, and has lived them, and can communicate them, is the way for our party to move forward. And that's why I'm in this race for governor. Thanks, Sabode. Take this away.
Today at the City Club, we are enjoying a forum in our Ohio 2018 Meet the Candidates series, a conversation with Nan Whaley, Mayor of Dayton, and Democratic candidate for Governor of Ohio. Our community partners for today's forum are the Cuyahoga Democratic Women's Caucus, the Cuyahoga Young Dems, and the League of Women Voters. We appreciate your support for promoting today's forum. We welcome guests at tables hosted by Nan Whaley for Ohio. Additionally, we welcome students for Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron. Welcome, everyone. Students' participation in City Club forums is provided by many foundations, including the William M. Weiss Foundation. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you, Ms. Whaley. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Payne Fund, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.